Clutter, an inevitable consequence of our human nature. That nice flat surface? We'll put something on it. That pile of laundry that still needs to be folded? We'll get to that tomorrow. That one drawer under our desk? We'll use that for everything that we probably won't need, but you never know. That random thing from our childhood that we won't look at for another 10 years? Just keep it in a bin. And while eventually our sanity takes hold and compels us to tidy up our physical space, we often neglect to declutter the things that occupy most of our waking hours, our devices. The small, compact size can trick us into ignoring the problem and sweeping it under the rug, but if we're honest with ourselves, we probably have enough waste in our devices to fill up our local landfill. Mental space is just as important as our physical space, and if we let our phones and our computers fill up with meaningless things that add no value, we end up cluttering our brains and adding unnecessary stress to our lives. So let's take a look at some of the things that we can all do to simplify our digital life and to give ourselves a little more mental clarity. I think we all know that we spend a lot of time staring at our screens, but how much time are we actually spending, and how much of that is just a mindless waste of time? Well, now that Apple has decided to expose us, we can see a clear breakdown of which apps we're spending the most time on. This is a bit embarrassing to admit that I have my phone in my hands for 9 to 10 hours a day, and while I do tend to use my Notes app to write my videos and plan my day, we can see here that that barely takes up much of my screen time at all. Most of it is spent browsing the internet and on social apps. And I would imagine that we all have a similar breakdown too. Now, the screen time feature gives us great options to schedule a downtime and to limit the amount of time that we're spending on certain apps each day, but we can also take charge of it ourselves. For any work that we need to do on a screen, try to do it on your computer instead. While this seems counterintuitive since your computer is another device, I find that computers have a lot less inherent distraction and less notifications than apps, so it's easier to get down to work and spend less overall time staring at the screen. Since a lot of our screen time is just for relaxing and killing time, we can be more intentional of when we're using our phones and what we're using them for. And even if you don't use the phone's forced downtime options, schedule yourself time each day where your phone is completely away in another room to resist temptation. And when you do grab your phone to check up on your news and social media, just give your primary apps one quick scroll through and then put your phone down, instead of falling into that cycle where you're constantly refreshing each one for hours. Then of course there is a nuclear option of those lockbox monstrosities. I'm sure they work, but hopefully we don't have to imprison our poor innocent phones for crimes of our own doing. Now that we want to spend some time away from our phones, let's help ourselves achieve this by doing a little decluttering of what is actually on them. We don't need as many apps as we think. If you're scrolling through 3 or 4 or 5 full pages of apps in your home screen, you definitely have a bunch that you can easily get rid of right now. We saw before that, at least for me, we cycle through the same 4 or 5 apps regularly, so there's certainly room for self-reflection on what we actually need to be keeping on our phones and how all these apps are adding to our mental clutter. I guarantee that if you're able to remove a full page worth of apps in your phone, the satisfaction that you get from that is just as good as when you clean an entire room in your house. For things that we don't use regularly but we still want to keep, I find that batching similar apps into groups is a great way of keeping things minimal while keeping the apps downloaded for when we need them. This might be a bit like shoving things into a bin and putting it in the closet to save the problem for later, but it definitely helps our mental space to keep things organized. You would probably be a bit overwhelmed if you were standing in a room with 500 people all staring at you and trying to get your attention all at once. So why do we let our social media be so flooded by famous people and random accounts that we don't even know personally? If you're like me, you probably use sites like Reddit and Twitter as your news source, so following pages that keep you in the loop of current events that you're interested in is one thing. But take a look at the whole list of people that you're following on Twitter and Instagram, and I guarantee that you can cut out 25% of those accounts that bring no value to you anymore. If anything, these celebrities that you're following just make you feel inadequate because you're not living the grand life that they have, and the other half of the time they're just trying to sell you random products that you don't need. Keep your social media reserved for people that you actually know in real life and have a connection with, and you'll find that checking these apps will start to give you a lot less stress. We all know that one person that has thousands of unread messages in their inbox. That used to be me, unfortunately. And this might be the worst offensive clutter in our devices, and it's also arguably the easiest to fix. First off, I like to use one single app for all of my email. And while the Gmail app or the Yahoo app might have more features and options than that standard mail app that comes with your phone, I like the minimalistic approach of having all my accounts in one place and having one single feed of all my inboxes. So you've probably made hundreds of accounts at different websites at this point, but that doesn't mean that you still need to be subscribed to daily emails from all of them. There are websites and apps that will do the unsubscribing work for you, but I find it more therapeutic and informative to do the work ourselves, as tedious as it might be. Take a long scroll of all your email from the past few days, and hit unsubscribe on all the daily promotions and newsletters that you're always ignoring or marking as read anyway. When you actually need to buy something, you'll search it up and seek out the best deal. You don't need to have a digital voice screaming at you to buy something every day. These emails do nothing but clutter your inbox, and they can make you accidentally miss an important email from work, from school, that ends up getting lost in the mix. The less things that we're subscribed to, the less time that we have to spend sorting through them and marking them as read. Whether you use your computer for school or for work, you probably have a bunch of files and documents that continue to pile up month after month. And if we don't keep these files named and organized, we're going to drive ourselves crazy trying to sort through the clutter when we need to find something in a pinch. I get lazy with this myself. It's so easy to just dump all my footage into my hard drive and get right to editing, but if I don't put everything into folders and name all of my B-roll shots, I'm going to stress myself out spending time trying to find a particular shot a year from now, when I could have just simply searched it up by name if I had been more organized. In the same way that we wouldn't want to have things laying out everywhere in our room, we shouldn't let our work and our files get messy. Just because they're not tangible things that we can see and touch, doesn't mean that they won't clutter our mental space. Oh, and while we're on the topic of computers, do you really need all those tabs open in your browser? I mean, how do you even know which tab is which? Maybe we can close like one or two or all of them. With a lot of us working and schooling from home these days, it's definitely easier to be distracted when we're on a computer where we're just one click away from losing focus, and we have our phone right next to us that we can easily grab and get lost in for a while. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with using our devices for work or for entertainment, we should try to make an effort to use them only in ways that add value to our lives. It's easy to shove that box of random crap under your bed, put your childhood collection of 500 Beanie Babies away in your closet, donate old clothes and throw away things that we're not using anymore to declutter our physical space. But we often don't realize how our devices are these tiny little things that are constantly filling our brains with more and more clutter than our living space could ever hold. So if we take these simple steps to mindfully limit our screen time, reduce what's on our screens, and keep the important things organized, we'll find our minds having much more space to breathe and be productive. Alright, that's all for now. Thank you for watching. I have to go refollow all those people that I just unfollowed to make this video. I'm just kidding. But if you did like this video, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a thumbs up, and I will see you next week.